All right, Mr. Ryan. Yeah, come up to the podium, and then Sergeant Ingram, can you swear Mr. Ryan in?
Yes, sir. Rodalius Ryan, Rodalius Ryan, Ryan.
And Mr. Ryan, are you the same person referred to as Rodalius Ryan on indictment number 22SC 183572?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you at this time under the influence of any alcohol, drugs, or medicine?
No, ma'am.
How old are you?
Currently 20 years old.
And how far did you go in school?
12th grade.
Are you able to read, write, and understand the English language?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you understand that you are charged in this indictment with count 1, conspiracy to violate the Racketeer, Influence, and Corrupt Organization Act, which carries a sentence of 5 to 20 years?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you understand that you have the right to plead either guilty or not guilty to these charges?
Yes, ma'am.
And if you plead not guilty or remain silent, you may receive a jury trial.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you had an opportunity to go over this plea of guilty and waiver of rights form with your attorney?
Yes, ma'am.
And have you and your attorney both reviewed it and you signed this document?
Yes, ma'am. That's my signature.
That's your signature?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you had enough time to speak with your attorney, Ms. Leah Abbasi, about all of the facts and circumstances known to you regarding charges in this indictment?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you been able to speak with her about any potential defenses?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you need any more time to discuss this case with your attorney?
No.
Are you satisfied with her counsel and representation?
Yes, ma'am.
You also had another attorney, Ms. Angela D. Williams. Are you satisfied with her counsel and representation?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you waive formal reading of the indictment?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you waive any defects, if any, with respect to the indictment?
No, ma'am. Could you repeat that for me?
Sure. Do you waive any and all defects in the indictment?
Yes.
And have you been arrested on these charges, specifically count 1, the conspiracy to violate the Racketeer, Influence, and Corrupt Organizations Act?
He was already in custody, so he was not taken into custody for these charges. However, he was booked for the charges in the Fulton County Jail.
And he was served with the arrest warrants on this?
Yes.
Has Ms. Abbasi advised you of the minimum and maximum sentence for the charge that you are pleading to?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you understand this is a negotiated plea of guilty, which means that the state will recommend to the court a sentence of 10 years to serve, commuted to the time you have served in this case? Do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you understand that this sentence should run concurrently with the sentence that you are already serving for 19 SC 168236? Do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you understand that the court does not have to accept this recommendation?
Yes, ma'am.
And the court can sentence you to the maximum on this charge?
I understand.
Do you understand that this plea may be used to enhance sentencing on other convictions in this jurisdiction as well as in other jurisdictions, including the federal courts?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you understand if you are not in the United States?
One moment. Please repeat the question. Do you understand that the
Enhancing
convictions?
sentence, that one, the one on enhancing sentence?
Yes, I just needed to explain a bit more what that means.
Do you understand that this plea may be used to enhance sentencing on other convictions in this jurisdiction as well as in other jurisdictions, including the federal courts?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you understand that if you are not a United States citizen, a guilty will result in deportation, just like a conviction at a trial would, and that this is true regardless of any advice by your attorney or anyone else.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you understand that there may be other adverse or unfavorable consequences as a result of this guilty plea conviction, just as there would be from a conviction following a trial? For example, your guilty plea may affect your right to vote, your right to hold public office, your right to serve on a jury, your right to obtain a passport, your right to receive, possess, and transport a firearm, or the ability to obtain employment. Do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty to a felony, if you use, receive, possess, or transport a firearm, or use a firearm in a crime, you will be guilty of a felony, which may carry a sentence of 1 to 15 years.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you understand that you waive any and all defenses, including any mental health defenses, by entering a plea of guilty?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you understand if you went to trial, you had the right to a trial by jury, the right to see, hear, and confront witnesses called to testify against you, and the right to testify to remain silent and not incriminate yourself?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you are giving up the following rights? And after I say each right, I'll ask you to respond, okay? The right to trial by jury,
Yes.
the right to remain silent and not incriminate yourself,
Yes.
the right to confront witnesses against you,
Yes.
the right to assistance of counsel hired by you or to court-appointed counsel if you cannot afford an attorney at the trial of your case,
Yes.
the right to the presumption of innocence,
Yes.
the right to testify on your own behalf and to present other evidence,
Yes, ma'am.
the right to subpoena witnesses and compel the production of evidence,
Yes, ma'am.
the right to have the charges against you proved beyond a reasonable doubt,
Yes.
and the right to appeal if convicted of these charges after trial.
Yes.
Has anyone forced, threatened, or promised you anything to get you to enter a guilty plea?
No, ma'am.
With respect to indictment 22 SC 183572, how do you plead to count 1, conspiracy to violate the Racketeer, Influence, and Corrupt Organizations Act?
Guilty.
Is this guilty plea freely and voluntarily given with a full knowledge of the charges against you?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you understand that you may have only a limited right to appeal this guilty plea conviction?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you understand that you have 4 years from today's date to file a habeas corpus petition challenging the voluntariness and constitutionality of this guilty plea?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you also understand that you have 30 days in which to appeal your conviction based on your plea today?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you also understand that you have until the end of this term of court to file a motion seeking to withdraw your guilty plea?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, if this case were to proceed and continue with trial, Your Honor, evidence has shown and will further show that Mr. Ryan conspired with others to participate in the Young Slime Life gang through a pattern of racketeering activity, and multiple defendants and unindicted co-conspirators have committed overt acts to further this conspiracy, including drug sales, aggravated assault, and murder, also including social media posts asserting their violent nature and dominance of Young Slime Life, aka YSL. Your Honor, the court has been present for evidence regarding the February 23rd, 2019 homicide of Mr. Jamari Holmes, in which Mr. Ryan and YSL co-conspirator, Damon Blaylock, lured both Jamari Holmes, Bernard Mitchell, and Rodney Uten to an apartment at 50 Mount Zion Road, which is in the Cleveland Avenue area. The evidence came out that during the course of that incident that Mr. Ryan, along with Mr. Blaylock, emerged from the apartment complex shooting at the vehicle which Mr. Holmes, Mr. Uten, and Mr. Mitchell were in, shooting Mr. Holmes in the head. After this incident, a few hours later, Mr. Ryan is seen posting on social media, on a public social media post, saying bet YSL makes the news. There has been other social media posts in which Mr. Ryan has promoted or enhanced the reputation of YSL. Your Honor, the state intended to show further evidence that once Mr. Ryan was convicted of the homicide of Mr. Holmes while in prison, he continued to enhance the reputation, power, and territory of YSL, specifically when YSL co-conspirator and co-defendant Christian Eppinger was given a bond for shooting at an Atlanta police officer. Mr. Ryan, while on a contraband phone in prison, posted on his social media accounts, he flashed a YSL sign and stated, "We're coming to get you. YSL shit, free my N-word brisk, F the DA, the gangway, we cash our bonds on this shit." Your Honor, this is the evidence that the state would have intended to show if we would have continued with trial. Given the current status, Your Honor, we've made an offer to Mr. Ryan for this commuted to time served offers from our concurrent with his current conviction, Your Honor. And I can approach with the documentation.
You may. And I wanted to just add one thing to the information about the different methods you have to file things after this plea, and that is that Misty Williams and Ms. Abbasi will represent you until either the end of this term of court or 30 days, whichever's later, and so they would be the ones to talk to about filing those things, unless either of them is permitted to withdraw before that time. They would be the ones to file those for you, okay?
No.
All right, Ms. Abbasi, is there anything that the defense wants to add to the record?
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, I have had the honor really of representing Mr. Ryan along with Misty Williams, who I'm quite disappointed she could not be here today for an important day. This trial has been exhausting for everybody, and that certainly includes Mr. Ryan, who has been going through the court system since he was 15 years old. We categorically and adamantly deny that YSL is the criminal, dangerous street gang which it's been made out to be through this trial. We're actually quite happy with the record which was established during the presentation of the state's evidence of the alleged murder of Mr. Jamari Holmes. This plea today, Mr. Ryan is making a decision which is going to be the best for his future, what future he has, because he's already serving a life sentence. Were he to be convicted and sentenced to additional time, he would remain in custody. As I stated, we think the record established will strongly support his appeal, and hopefully, when his conviction is overturned, we don't want him sitting in prison for something else. Certainly not for actions he took when he was younger, and actions he took which are largely a product of how he grew up. As I stated, Your Honor, Mr. Ryan was 15 years old at the time of the Jamari Holmes murder. You've seen through the text messages, he was out at all different hours, doing all different things, which I don't think anyone would want their 15-year-old to be out doing. And so that is where he was, and so he did adopt the people who were around him, the people who could support him, the people in his neighborhood who grouped themselves, calling themselves YSL. Mr. Ryan at no point was trying to advance a criminal street gang and their interests. He was trying to protect himself, being a young person, largely on his own, and this is where he's ended up. I would like to say that there's been some sort of rehabilitative function here since he was sentenced to prison. It doesn't appear that that has happened. As you've heard, some of his additional cases are within the prison system. It would be wonderful if some of the money spent on a case like this could possibly be invested in the future of people like Mr. Ryan, who go into custody at such a young age, and who really then are not given the resources to make the changes that they really would like to make to have a productive future. With all of that said, I think Mr. Ryan has grown up a lot during this trial. He doesn't want to sit through this anymore. He doesn't want to ever be back in a courtroom ever again, Your Honor. He's heard about all sorts of incidents, which the 2015 crimes, he was 11 years old. Mr. Ryan's most sincere wish is to move on with his life, to put this behind him. And we thank the court for the opportunity to resolve the case in this way and not drag it out any further than it has been.
All right.
He just would like to thank the court, Judge.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Ryan, I just want to make sure that you understand that this is ultimately, the decision is yours to make, not your attorney's, and I appreciate that both Ms. Abbasi and Misty Williams have been available in giving you legal advice and guidance, but it's ultimately your decision. Do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and do you in fact want to plead guilty?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and you've had enough time to think about it and to discuss it with your attorneys?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And Ms. Abbasi, have you and or Mr. Williams talked to Mr. Ryan about the benefits and drawbacks of all of his different options?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. All right. I find that there is a factual basis for the guilty plea to count one, the conspiracy to violate the RICO Act. Whatever the difference of opinion may be with regard to what YSL is or isn't, and what Mr. Ryan may or may not have intended, there is a factual basis that exists from the record as it already is in this case to support the necessary elements of the conspiracy to violate the RICO Act. And I have heard many of the alleged overt acts and the conspiracy evidence to advance the enterprise through a pattern of racketeering activity and to control personal property and money, and I find that the factual basis for that exists. And I am going to accept Mr. Ryan's guilty plea. I find it to be freely, knowingly, intelligently, and voluntarily entered with an understanding of the consequences of this plea. And I'm going to sentence in accord with the recommendation that both of the state and the defense have worked hard to negotiate here, which is a sentence of 10 years commuted to time served and to be run concurrently with the sentence that Mr. Ryan is currently serving. And certainly within the court's consideration is the knowledge that Mr. Ryan is at this time serving a life sentence for the murder of Mr. Holmes. And while I understand that that is on appeal right now, you know, those are the facts as they exist right now. So that is the sentence of this court. Mr. Ryan, at 20 years old, you have most of your life ahead of you, and I don't know what it is going to hold with regard to your appeal or anything after that. But whether it is more years in custody or whether at some point in time you see the light of day to the outside world again, which is very likely considering your age, as long as you behave yourself while you're incarcerated and do not continue to either commit crimes in prison or violate any of the prison rules. If you can be on the straight and narrow, then somebody your age, after serving some amount of time, is probably going to be considered favorably for parole. And you just have to keep that in mind, that you need to be looking out for sort of the long run and not playing the short game, but playing the long game so that you have a future in front of you still. So that is your sentence, and I wish you luck, and I wish that with further maturity, much like Ms. Abbasi has said that you have already exhibited throughout the course of this trial, that you are able to make better decisions and steer your life in a better direction. Thank you.
Thank you.